Shanna. Where's Beth? I thought you were bringing her.
Not today. She's with T-Mobile.
She found her dog?
Okay, you know, we can hear everything you say.
Did she find her dog?
Yeah, we're not meeting, Ken.
All right, we're going to begin our meeting. Rise,
Yeah.
kneel, stand, whatever you want to
All
do.
rise.
You're gonna do "Oh Beautiful" again?
Oh, cool. The karaoke.
Karaoke.
We're gonna do karaoke.
I'm proud to be an American.
We're supposed to be singing?
Chavez thinks it's karaoke.
Because there's no sound.
Yeah, are we supposed to be hearing something or?
Oh, we're supposed to be on there.
Ken was supposed to sing this.
From sea to shining sea.
That was fun.
There was no sound.
You didn't hear it?
No.
I could have sang it for you guys.
Everybody can hear it but you, Dave.
No,
No, Brian forgot to turn on the share audio. So
No,
Brian
I
could
don't
hear it, but the rest of us could.
I don't have
Is there any
share
way that Chris could re-sing it and also do an interpretive dance while he does that?
You know, his culture is full of dance, so he's
You can do
actually.
a rain dance.
We do it.
I can't believe
okay, you ready
you
for
guys
prayer?
didn't hear.
There's not gonna
Yes.
be dance with this.
All right,
As Rotarians, help us to bear the unbearable sorrow, to go where the brave dare not go, to right the unrightable wrong, to try when our arms are too weary, to reach the unreachable star. Amen.
Amen.
Man from La Mancha.
okay. Jerry?
This is mine. This is thought of the day. I'm only responsible for what I say, not for what you understand.
That's a
All
good,
right.
Perfect.
Perfect, yes. Okay, I just wanted to remind you guys on Saturday, this Saturday, we're doing a community project with Area 6 for Morgan Hill Rotary Club. And I was told that Rebecca already voluntold Chris, Jesse, and Joan. So I'm just want to verify. You go there at starts at 8. Bring gloves, water bottle, protective eye gear. I guess if you're going to be using a weed whacker or something. And a mask if you want to. It might be dusty there too. So here's the address, and I'm going to be there, but I'm going to be late because I have to be at some meeting that Ken was supposed to be at. So I won't be there till 1, just to let you guys know.
Brian, I have the same problem.
Okay. So, I mean, I'm sure it'll probably go past 12, or I can go there and I can text you, Joan, if it's still going on.
Okay, perfect.
It
I'll
said,
try and make it too.
it said till
Okay.
sunset.
Let's just say we're not going to be there at 8 a.m.
Okay. Are you going to, Dave? Mr. Olson?
I may have a conflict. I don't know yet. I got to talk to my wife.
Okay. All right. Then on the 26th, I wanted to make sure I had a correct list here. There are some people like Tanner. Have you decided if you can make it on the 26th to the awards dinner?
I'm still looking at it. Let me look at my calendar again real quick.
All right, I'll make it a maybe. Okay. And then I already talked to Miles. Ken, what did you say? No, yes?
Yes, we can go now.
And that'd be 2?
That would be, oh,
That's on a Saturday, right? Not a Friday, because Friday nights he's busy.
Saturday. Okay, is that
Says
two?
Saturday in bold letters there.
Just put down 1 right now.
All right. Bill, can you make it?
Can I bring that? Huh? What about you?
Yeah, mhm.
He's gone.
Party at
Okay.
Jones' house, right?
Right.
You
Is that a
bet.
1? Is that 1 or 2?
2.
Okay, and Dave?
What's our time? That's 5:30, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm going. I believe 2, including me.
okay.
And what's, we have an address, oh, there we, no.
Oh, the address?
Mhm.
Yeah, I'll send you, it was in the invitation, but I'll send it out.
Great.
Yeah, I'll put it in the Skype chat.
And
Okay.
what about, what do we bring?
Yourself.
Yourselves.
Oh, is that all? Okay. That's easy.
Okay, stop share.
I'll check with my wife again. If I have a conflict, I'll let you know.
Okay. Okay, so I did talk to Rebecca. She did send me a president's leave. She must be feeling better. She said her liver is doing fine, but her kidney's not. And she broke her shoulder and she's having it operated on.
Oh, shit.
So she probably fell or something, but she's hanging in there. So I'll let you know when, if there's any other information that comes out.
So you don't anticipate that she'll come to the party, do you?
I don't know. She said yes. So I don't know.
Because one of my concerns is that typical of a kick-out party is to do some kind of rouse or something
Right.
fun, and, you know, I don't know whether it's appropriate at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Or if we could just make some kind of a video from all of us that was one quick comment or something, and,
Oh, okay.
I like that.
That's a good idea.
Good idea, Joan.
you know, and if she's not at the party, we could actually do it at the party
Yeah.
and then send it to her.
Yeah. That's a good idea.
Very
I
good.
can put it together on my iPhone.
But are we working on a debunking at all?
Yeah, Ken, are we working on a debunking at all? Ken, I see you there in the background.
Somebody's not. in a-
It seems like they're more interested about
Sorry,
eating.
we were muted. It was too far for us. Yeah, so Joan and Dave and I have talked, and Greg, so we're gonna, I think it's best that we just do some kind of video, so
Okay,
we'll just send out like a link to do like a 30-second or whatever, each from each person, or as many people that
Whatever
want to
somebody
do it.
wants to say.
Yeah, if you want to say something, that's great. But, and then, so I think we kind of talked about trying to live stream the party if she's unable to come, or do something like that.
yeah,
And then play that video for her, or send her the link or whatever. We'll figure it out. I just want her to be included if she can't come.
okay. All right, great.
Any chips? Yay or nay?
Oh my God, can you guys mute yourself? I mean, you're making me
You just
hungry.
got mad at us because I wasn't talking, and now you're
All right,
Can you bring
so,
us lunch?
pardon me?
Can Ken bring us lunch?
No.
Virtually.
I'm hungry.
not only is Jessie beautiful, she also goes and delivers a mean
Oh
sandwich.
my gosh. Thank you.
Okay,
Can you mute us again?
all right. Josh,
May not be the.
there you are. Josh,
Here.
yes. So our speaker today is Josh Rupert. He's from Hunter and Storm Properties, and we are
Repeat, please.
lot of work in real estate. I think he started in Oklahoma, where he was a director of facilities for several companies. He also was something to do with a squadron in the military. I'm not sure what he was flying. Was it drones or something? Or he can let us know. So Josh, you can share the screen and you can start whenever you want.
The beauty of presenting via Zoom is that, you know, you never know quite when you're muted or not. Hopefully, can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to start by saying thank you to Brian and all of you for allowing me to speak today. It is really a pleasure when I get to talk to the community. As Brian alluded to, my career never intended to start with real estate. I was a graduate of the Naval Academy in Annapolis in 2000, and after that time frame, I went to flight school. I used to fly an airplane, not a drone, but an airplane called the EA-6B Prowler. So for those of you that may know that platform, it's electronic attack. It's an old A6 Intruder, or was an A6 Intruder. Actually, they decommissioned that aircraft within the last 5 years. So that was a sort of a sad day, although the Marines still fly it. So if any Marines are out there, that's probably something that you're not surprised by. But as Brian alluded to, I have been in the real estate industry for the last 12 years. It's a very wild story, which I'm sure will bore most of you, so I won't go into it. But I will say, you know, transitioning from working from running a corporate real estate team in a publicly traded company to a private real estate development firm in Silicon Valley, honestly did not prepare me for what we're going to talk about today, which is the trials and tribulations of the entitlement process in Silicon Valley. So I thought it would be something that you all might enjoy hearing about. I think everyone knows the issues that Silicon Valley and Northern California and California, frankly, in general have with the housing shortage. And you've seen and probably heard about this, you know, mass exodus, which I would argue is probably a little bit inflated, but there's no denying that we need more housing. And as we go through this process, I thought I would just give you all an idea of how we choose sites, how we go through the process, and ultimately why it takes so long, and perhaps you know, give you an idea of some of those issues. And certainly feel free to ask questions along the way. I do talk fairly fast. I do recognize that. So if you need me to slow down, or if you need me to repeat myself, please just don't hesitate to ask. So with that, a little bit about us. So I do, as Brian alluded to, I do work for Hunter Storm, which is the development arm of Hunter Properties. We have been an organization since 1960 with our original principal, Derek Hunter Sr. We now, our president is Derek Hunter Jr. And his partner is Ed Storm. And so we have been a fixture in commercial real estate development across the peninsula really since that time. In fact, Derek Sr. Built the first high-rise office building in San Jose. So we've got a lot of history. We do a lot of retail development. And for most of you, you know that retail development is a lot different now than it was even 5 years ago. So we really focus on office primarily at this point. However, as you'll see with this project, this is a residential project, multifamily, and that's a little bit unique that a commercial development team would be so involved in a project of this size, as 1,565 units is a big project for anybody, even your large multifamily developers. And so the reason for that is, and you'll see in the slide here in a few minutes, upcoming slide, we actually were really the master planner of a much larger development, which Gateway Crossings was the residential component of that. So although you know, most real estate developers in some way have an ego. Ours is not that inflated that we realize we may be able to entitle residential, but we certainly can't build it. So we have partnered with a group called the Holland Partners, who is based out of Vancouver, Washington, but they have developed properties all over the West Coast, including Silicon Valley and Santa Clara. So they are our phase 1 ground lessee. This 1,565 units is broken up into 2 distinct phases, as you can see here. And the 725 units for phase 1 is what I'm really going to be talking about today. That encompasses 2 residential buildings, a 2-acre public park, and this retail components that you can see. The hotel has a unique story too, and if we have time, I'll get into that. So these are the topics we're going to talk about today, and I want to be mindful of everyone's time. I won't go into I'm going to try to keep it as brief as possible. I don't want to bore you either, but these are the things that we're going to talk about today. And again, if you have any questions, just please let me know. So as I mentioned previously, Gateway Crossings was the residential component of a much larger master plan, which includes the Coleman Highline project, which you can see here. If you've been to the airport recently, you've probably seen the Roku buildings. Those are our buildings. And those are 4 of the 6 buildings that are currently built or under construction. We have 2 more that we're working through. And this that I'm circling here is the Verizon campus, so Verizon Media Campus. So they are moving from Mountain View over to Coleman Highline. So, and it's, as you can see here, directly adjacent to our hotel project and to building 2. So when we're selecting a site, you've probably heard the word transit-oriented development. And that TOD is the sort of go-to buzzword for all, for most, if not all, multifamily developments, really residential developments in general. The irony here is that when we go through the process, most city staff and even those residents that find themselves in, willing to speak and at the dais, they talk about the utilization of public transit. And as you can imagine, public transit has essentially, almost, the usership has almost gone down to 0 during the pandemic, but we still believe that will increase. And that is certainly something that we agree with. And this plan for having projects as close to transit as possible. However, what we found is when the rubber literally meets the road, a lot of people in Silicon Valley still like to drive their cars. So, you'll find planners and others who are like, hey, let's drive down our parking ratios to almost nothing. And at the same time, we're hearing people in the background saying, but how are you going to park that? So it is a unique, it's a unique puzzle that we have to go through. And we try to, again, address that through transit-oriented development. As it relates to Gateway Crossings in particular, we are literally across the tracks from the Santa Clara train station. So it is the #2 train station in Silicon Valley, just behind San Jose. It is the southern terminus of the future BART station, which if any of you have been following that, you probably know that was supposed to have been done by 2018 and then 2021 and then 2025. And now they're talking about perhaps 2030. We do have a good relationship with those folks at the VTA, and we still believe, and we're planning for that to be built, but we can't say definitively when that is. But we did sort of put our money where our mouth is. And part of that is that there is a new pedestrian tunnel, and I say new loosely now, it was actually finished in 2017, but we paid half of that. It was a public-private partnership to get that new tunnel built to Brokaw Road, which basically puts it right at the south of our buildings. And ultimately right now, most of the users that are using that and exiting at this location are going to the Earthquakes game, which the soccer team is adjacent to our Coleman Highline project, about a 1/4 mile from Gateway Crossings. Ultimately, when we're looking at a residential project, it's just a basic economics problem. It comes down to supply and demand. I think I try to reiterate in my preamble that this housing crisis that we're under, at the end of the day, the bottom line is we got to build. We have to build. If we want to address this crisis at all, we have to build. The problem is that we find, a lot of folks are not are very comfortable with building housing, multifamily housing in particular. They're just not as comfortable if it's in or around their property. And so it is a delicate balance because, you know, frankly, the folks that can afford to buy, you know, single family home in this market are making a lot more than most middle income earners are. So you're finding a group of people who are either getting, you know, deeded property through, you know, some type of you know, unfortunate incident with family members through that process, through the will process, or they're living in Tracy or Hollister or Modesto and driving what we call super commutes, 3.5, 4 hours sometimes to get to work. That's ridiculous. Particularly for the folks that, you know, drive a location to include, or drive a city to include police officers, firefighters, teachers. So at the end of the day, we have to address this crisis. And the first way to do that is to build. And so one of the things that we're, again, sort of bringing it back to this TOD idea, we also are very cognizant of the idea of as we move people to mass transit, get them out of their vehicles, that will also help with the massive gridlock that, you know, if there is one, you know, probably the only benefit to the pandemic is that for those who are back in the office, the commute is not like it was 18 months ago. I don't know if anyone else has seen this. I have started seeing the gray commuter buses come back. So that is the first, that in my mind, the leading indicator that people are going to start coming back to their office, which as an office developer, for us is a good thing. But in the meantime, getting these folks to live as close to their house, or excuse me, as close to their office as possible and utilize mass transit is something that we are very supportive of. As it relates specifically to Gateway Crossing, it's perfect for that. As it relates to Santa Clara University, we're very, very close. We don't know that many students will be able to live there given sort of the rental rates that we expect, but we do believe that faculty will be using it. Same thing with Coleman Highline, the proximity to the airport, all of these things play into the role of why this is a good location for housing, and frankly, why it should have been a slam dunk entitlement, and it wasn't, which we'll talk about here in a few minutes. So entertainment and lifestyle, particularly as it relates to retail, you can see we've got the Earthquake Stadium, which you know, as if there are any soccer fans on the call today, will understand. You know, they only have about 30 events there a year. It's not like you would see at, you know, the other locations in San Francisco or things where the Warriors play, where they have, you know, 300 dates. So it's not quite the entertainment that you know you would get at other locations, but it still is something that is close by. And we really planned the development itself. I mentioned that 2-acre public park because we know that green space is important. So we've planned it for playgrounds, dog parks, barbecue spaces, etc. And as it relates to Tavern on the Green, which is another little 3,500 square foot retail space that we've kept back from the park dedication, which we will be developing as a bar restaurant component in the next probably 2 to 5 years, which will hopefully open right as we're opening buildings 1 and 2 on our residential side, and allowing for sort of an iconic food and beverage location to be you know, close by. Proximity to retail. This is still a critical component for most people in the multifamily world and most residents of multifamily. And so we are very close to the Costco. We're also adjacent to the Costco. We're also very close to Coleman Landings, which you can sort of see the anchors that are located there. What it does, it improves our marketability. Which in the environment that we're currently in, where we're in such a housing crisis, marketability doesn't play as much of a role as it would have maybe in a less, you know, a less supply, you know, in an environment where supply was less than what we have today, or excuse me, more than what we have today. Retail would play a bigger role than it does, but it's still important, and it's mostly important to the municipalities. And I'll sort of talk about that as we start going through the issues that we found going through it, which we'll start right about now. So I think this is a really important slide because it shows who we as developers have to look at for when we're trying to identify how are we going to get this project approved. Who do we need to influence, and who are the influences? And you can see city staff, local activists, residents, financial partners. I've sort of crafted this in a way that says each one of these individual groups are influencers. Unfortunately, they might in some cases have opposing agendas, which puts the developer and the design team right in the middle of those. And often, we're sort of playing referee when in a lot of cases, at least when I was reared in development back on the East Coast and in the Midwest, city staff played that role. They don't really play that role here. They want the developers to work it out with the residents. And in some cases that is more difficult than it may sound. As it relates to community outreach for gateway crossings, these are the three things that happened that changed because of the additional community outreach that we did. We were forced, frankly, at the dais to add an additional 25,000 square foot of retail that we as retail developers and our economists recommended not to do. So, unfortunately, as we were going through this process, it was very apparent to us that the city and the residents, particularly the activists that came and spoke, against our project, they wanted additional retail, despite the fact that, we as the, quote unquote experts, as well as our economists who frankly are a neutral party, said that only 20,000 feet would work. Well, we realized we would not get the project approved if we held to our guns. So we basically have planned out for phase 2 of this project, a retail lined paseo, which you can see in this third picture, which will absorb about 20,000 square feet of that 25,000 that we are bringing. And we're very hopeful and we'll be relying on the VTA and the BART station to help us activate that. But without that, there may be dark storefronts. And that's the part that people forget, is that when you have any type of residential project, having dark storefronts is a really difficult proposition, particularly as it relates to safety and other things. You want an active experience, but again, as we're pushing through these projects and getting saddled, for lack of a better word, with additional retail, additional density, and other items, it really is a zero-sum game. And so as those things get thrust upon us, other things have to come down. And because of that additional retail, we actually had to reduce our proposed density from 1,600 units to 1,565 units in order to address both the traffic and parking concerns. So it was, something that we weren't expecting along the way. We have yet to prove out whether or not who's right in this, whether it's us or the city with respect to this additional retail. But we're very hopeful that we'll be able to lease those spaces up. Community benefits is something that I think most folks don't really think about when thinking about development. But most developments now, as everyone probably knows here, there are a lot of entitlements at the local level here for employees and others, that some are funded, some are not. And the pandemic was incredibly disruptive to the general funds of each one of our local cities. And so there is a strong wind of folks that believe, well, hey, let's work at trying to make up some of this deficit through outstanding fees and things that have to be paid for these new developments. Again, bringing back this idea that it's a zero-sum game. Every time a new fee is addressed or a new fee is assessed to one of these projects, something else has to give. So, we are very cognizant that we want to build a project that is affordable. We do have a 10% affordable housing requirement on phase 1. We have a 15% affordable housing requirement on phase 2. But aside from that, we also want to make these projects affordable so that everyday people, those folks that I called out earlier, are able to live here. Well, we have to give somewhere when these fees are thrust upon us. And so, like typically that fee that comes or it goes directly correlates to increased rental rates, which is required for us to even pull construction loans and get these things through. So it is something that everyone needs to think about as your cities are developing and underwriting these new fees, is that it comes out of somewhere. The one item that I want to spend a couple seconds talking about is retail as a community benefit. So everyone understands there is a difficult proposition afoot, and that is, how do we continue with the desire of the market, if you will, the free market, that people order the majority of their items, including that, those disposable items, through Amazon or something similar. And how does that affect the brick and mortar retailers that frankly have been eaten up as part of the pandemic? And so the way that we are starting to look at this, and we're trying to get the communities to back us and city staff to agree with us, is retail should be considered a community benefit exactly like affordable housing is. And what I mean by that is that we are now having to underwrite retail and supplement retail in a way that we never had to 5-10 years ago. And that's because, retailers are requiring lower rents. They're requiring more landlord improvements before they accept the space. They're requiring more tenant improvements as part of that negotiation as well. And so for the example of our project, when we move through the project and these retail numbers changed, it should have been addressed or recognized as a community benefit in our minds because of how much we have to supplement it, but it's not something that was ever addressed. So just something to think about as you're moving forward, particularly at these city council meetings where there's a discussion about housing versus retail versus office, what retail is and how it's changed. The one thing that I found really interesting about when I moved out here 6 years ago was this idea of negotiating community benefits at the dais. I'd never experienced that before. All those things had been done beforehand in my experience, but that is very common. And you can see, we had 3 city council meetings for this project. So again, we're literally across the tracks. We're greater than a mile away from the nearest single family home. We were taking a brownfield development, an old industrial park, cleaning it up and making it residential that we desperately need. Yet it still took us 3 city council meetings to get approved. And you can see here what was the cause of that, or what happened while we were doing that. And you can see that, we increased our original density in the first meeting. The second meeting was when we were hit with the additional retail. In the third meeting, which we ultimately got approved, we got approved because we agreed with the police to basically host the Police Activities League in 7,500 square feet of our retail, which does help, frankly, offset some of that retail that I mentioned previously that we were required to take in order to get approved, but not all of it. But we have negotiated a lease with the Police Activities League that will get them space in our project. It is basically $1 a month. It's a 34.5-year lease, I believe is the term. And so we were able to get some residents and some supporters because of that, which ultimately City Council finally approved. Interestingly enough, though, in order to get the phase 1 portion of our project built, particularly building 2, our original development agreement required that the hotel be built as part of phase 1, and they wouldn't allow us to get a building permit for phase 2 without it. Well, last summer, so we ended up getting approved in July of 2019. In July of 2020, we were ready to move forward with Holland as our ground lessee and try to bring these 720 units to bear the market, knowing again that there's dire need. Unfortunately, though, as part of that process, we had to amend our development agreement, and nothing is free. So the city negotiated at the dais. The city, led by some resident activists, did increase our BMR component from 10 to 15% in phase 2, but that did allow us to move our hotel from phase 1, thus unlocking all those community benefits after that. So again, this idea of negotiating at the dais is something that we do now. Is very common, but it's not something that I'd ever experienced before. I'm going to leave this up. I know it's a bit of an eyesore, and I apologize for that, but this gives you an idea of the process. It took us 5 years to get this approved. We wonder why we have a housing crisis. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, like this one should have been a slam dunk. And you can see all of the public outreach that was done. You can see, when the designs have begun. What they don't show you as part of the entitlement is the end of this, which was what they referred to as a design review board or an architectural review board. And that took us about 9 months to complete as well. And we just got that approved in April. So The process of entitlement here is just so, it's so long that this idea of expect the unexpected, even when you think the great irony here is you see Q4 of 2018, we got 7-0 planning commission approval. So we thought at that point, hey, this is a piece of cake. We're gonna get this through. It's not gonna be an issue. Everyone sees the benefits that we do. We're gonna be fine. Well, at the first city council meeting, one of the planning commissioners that voted for us and our project came and spoke against our project as part of the first city council meeting. So, I mean, it is truly, you just never know what's gonna happen. One of the things that makes our project so difficult is the CEQA process, which stands for California Environmental Quality Assurance, which in its design is a really good process. It's intended to look at all new projects and review them under the lens of environmental impacts, architectural impacts, construction impacts, all these traffic impacts, all these things that we all agree are good things. The downside to the process is that it can be manipulated. And what I mean by that is that as the CEQA process is being approved, other actors can insert themselves into the process and can, contest the CEQA. And it doesn't matter whether their contestation is genuine or disingenuous, the process still has to review it until they have removed themselves from the process or removed their litigation or at least their questions. And so it's really difficult to underwrite CEQA into the process. Now, we're very lucky. We've had this project since 2009. We weren't in the process of having any type of options, but there are a lot of projects that have options on them related to getting them entitled so that new development can occur. And these folks that are utilizing the CEQA process to their advantage understand that, and they recognize that time is money. So they realize if they put pressure on the developers and their partners, if they have an option on the project, they may just basically work the timeline so that they're out of options, which puts the developer in a really tough position. So it is just another example of something that the genesis of is really great, but unfortunately it's been manipulated in some instances. So I'm getting to my last couple slides here, and I'll open it up for questions. And I hope I haven't bored you through this, and hopefully you're getting an idea of some of the trials and tribulations. So the reason why I'm excited to talk to you today is that organizations like the Rotary, like the Chamber of Commerce, like the American Legion and others are critical advocates for new development. So again, and we look to business, local business, nonprofit organizations to help us with this project, because it's I think we've all seen this. When you're really fired up against something, you're more motivated to go speak against it. Whereas we refer to it as the silent majority, we believe, and I've talked to thousands of residents in Silicon Valley since I moved here, and the large majority of them are pro-development. They understand the problem we're having with residential, and they know the largest way to address that problem is to build more housing. The problem is, in some cases, those folks work 12 hours a day, or they work 2 jobs, or they're driving to Modesto, or they're doing any number of things that frankly are a priority over speaking at the dais in behalf of a project. And so, what we have found, and what I have found in particular over the last 6 years, is that engaging your supporters early is absolutely critical. Finding out what is that one thing that does motivate them. And in this case, for the project at Gateway Crossings, we were able to grab enough support from the business, the nonprofits, and the local residents that got us across the finish line. But again, we had every single city council meeting, we had at least 25 people coming to coming to speak against our project. And so if we didn't match those numbers, it makes it very difficult for city leadership and the council to approve it. So with that, I will open it up for any questions. It's important. Hopefully you got something out of this. Obviously my information is now here on the screen. I'll leave this up during the Q&A if there are questions. If there aren't, that's fine too. But if something comes up later that you'd like to talk about, please let me know. As I mentioned, it really is my pleasure being here. Love speaking to Rotary organizations, and hopefully you got something out of it.
Thank you, Josh. I have a question. Do you know that today or pretty soon, the city of San Jose is going to decide whether to eliminate the single family resident zoning so that it will never be just one house on one lot? So I was wondering, what do you think about that? How would it impact the market? And I mean, is it going to really change things?
That's a great question. And obviously I'm speaking on behalf of myself here as it relates to this question. It's a difficult proposition for me because I think that there's this, frankly, at least where I was born and raised, the American dream was to own your own home. And, to have a yard and all these things. And obviously that's changed quite a bit over the last 45 years. But I do believe that single family housing has its role in this process, because it's not, it's not a one size fits all problem that we find ourselves in. So I think that limiting, just flat out saying no more single family housing will get built is not the approach. It feels reactive to me. I feel like we're playing the short game instead of the long game. And frankly, that's how we got here, right? It's people not being proactive and forward thinking in how they do their zoning and their planning. That being said, I do think that there are some real advantages to the additional dwelling units and allowing people to put ADUs on their yard, on their their parcels that they own, moving to to duplexes and triplexes and quadplexes, I think has its place, but I don't think it can be the only thing. I think it needs to be, I think we need to continue to have that variety. The irony, of course, is where do you put it, right? At some point, if you move out of San Jose, you move into Santa Clara County, you're now moving into areas that have their own problems like wildfires and other things that could be part of that as you're moving into undeveloped land. But I don't think there is I don't necessarily think that Josh Rupert, as I'm speaking on behalf of myself, that I think eliminating single family housing is the answer. I think it has to be a well thought out, combination of all those factors that play into, the zoning and master planning of these local municipalities.
Okay. All right. Is there any other questions?
Yeah, I had a question. This is Ken. I mean, I had a comment with what you said. I mean, because it seems like the city, we want to be close to mass transit and all that. So I live in Willow Glen, and if they're starting to put in duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes next door to me, we're not that close to mass transit, and then it ruins kind of the fabric of our little niche in the city. Okay, so that's just a comment. So question, do you get incentivized for being closer to transit? Does your project, not just for approval, like, hey, these guys checked all the boxes, this is great, but financially, do you get any kind of benefit for doing that? And then I have another question right after that.
I have a question before your question.
It's too late.
Go ahead, Josh.
All right. Okay, so to your first question, there really isn't an incentive, financial incentive for us being close to transit. It does help through the CEQA process because it allows us to, in some regard, I guess there is actually a bit of a financial incentive because it does impact our traffic counts and, particularly new traffic counts, which flow into what we refer to as traffic impact fees. And so those fees are reduced based on your proximity to mass transit. So in that way, we do get a sort of a secondary or tangential financial impact by that. But there's no fee offset that I'm aware of, at least, for being next to transient oriented developments or next to mass transit. However, it does help us at the dais, right? Which, we sort of prove in the 5-year model that we I just showed the timeline. It does help us. It obviously doesn't help us a ton since it still took us 5 years, but we do get some benefit from being close to that as it goes through the approval process and then ultimately with our impact fees.
Okay, why don't we let Dave do his question because he might forget it, and then I'll ask after him.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Josh, you'd mentioned that you wanted to address the super commuter that lives out there in Modesto to be able to live closer to where they work, correct?
Absolutely. Yes,
Okay,
100%.
so 100%. So I'm still trying to get my arms around how you're going to match what they have in Modesto and come out here and get the same value for the same money.
So that's also a great question. You're right. Not everyone is going to want to move back to the cities or the urban environments, right? Like if you live in Modesto or Tracy or Hollister or wherever, you can buy a single family home at a substantially less, a substantial discount what you can find here. What I'm suggesting though is that it's not, there is, in my opinion, a percentage of folks that live out there by necessity, not by want. And so what I'm really addressing are the people, for example, we have on our construction projects, I would say at least 50% of the folks that come, throw a hammer or turn a wrench are super commuters. And so I'm more addressing those folks who are doing it because they can't afford to live close by and would be willing to, accept a smaller place, maybe that doesn't have a yard or has a public park element or something else. Because I believe those folks exist, particularly under the age of 35. But if you've moved out to Modesto because you have a family and you want a backyard, Gateway Crossings isn't for you. But I feel like there is, and I can't put a number to that. I mean, I don't know what that percentage is, but I believe and have met folks. So I know that I'm not just assuming this completely, that would move back if the housing was built that within the parameters of what's existing today.
I'd have to, yeah, I'm sorry, but I'd have to disagree with you because people are starting families in their 20s and 30s and under 35, I don't see them moving back from Modesto. They're getting a house out there, they're getting half the price, they're getting a yard. Yes. They got 2 or 3 kids. I got a buddy of mine I work with, he's got 7 kids, lives out in Modesto. And he couldn't afford anything here,
That's an exception.
And so I'm sorry, but I don't agree with that under 35 factor.
So let me tell you this, I absolutely, maybe 35 is not the right word, but I'm going to tell you that there's 2 things. The first one is, I have lived the super commute. I mean, I say super commute. I actually have, it was not defined as a super commute, but I lived in Gilroy and commuted every day. Some days it took me an hour and a half to get there. I now have moved closer to my office, but I can tell you it was 3 hours every day that I didn't see my kids. And so, I was willing to accept a smaller home and some other things in order to do it. So I can speak from at least myself that I do think there are people that are willing to work, at least move if we have it. The other argument I would make is theoretically, and I believe genuinely this is an economics problem. Theoretically, if the supply increases, then that will sort of flow through the rest of the remaining inventory. And maybe those houses and maybe those condos and apartments that would be more a fit, not for the person with 7 kids, mind you, but for others, would go down in cost, thus making it more, available to them. So it's not a perfect answer, but I will say the status quo is not working. So we got to do something.
Okay, thank you. Now on to Ken Tabonaire.
Josh, okay, so I have a question. I mean, you guys look, 25, 30, I mean, obviously it takes a long to get projects. You got to probably look 40 years of the future. Okay, so I look at all this parking downtown San Jose, and then I kind of think about, in my mind, am I really going to need my car in 30 years from now? I'm going to go on my phone. It's going to come pick me up and take me to work. And then I don't even really need a car. So are you guys looking at, hey, how do I buy a cheap parking structure like on Almaden and Santa Clara now and kind of wait? And then is all that stuff zoned for like commercial office buildings, or is it zoned for parking? And how does that all work?
So typically it's not. Typically we would have to go in, and if we purchase something like that, would have to go in and get it rezoned in order to meet whatever we're trying to develop there. So whether it be office or residential or what have you. I think your point though is a really good one as it relates to how these cities look at parking. So as I mentioned in the presentation, there's a really fine line that we're sort of walking at this point. And I can stop sharing my screen so so there's a real fine line that we're walking at this point as it relates to parking, because there are you know, there are a lot of folks who are doing as you suggested, which was, hey, I don't think I'm going to be driving 25 years. We're going to have driverless cars. And there's an IPO somewhere in Mountain View where they're looking at, you know, freaking airplanes to fly people around. So, you know, so I'm sure we're in the middle of wherever that's going to be. So the problem we run into is that, and it's twofold. The city councils typically are sort of pushing us towards not having parking, which is great, particularly for projects that are close to mass transit. The problem is that hasn't filtered out into the office or the retail tenants. And what I mean by that, particularly retail. So I didn't mention, you know, the other projects that I'm, you know, involved with or the project lead on. One of them is the redevelopment of downtown Sunnyvale. So I've been with that since I moved out here 6 years ago. Those of you that have been out there have probably seen the new Whole Foods and AMC that we built. The AMC is awesome. So go back and watch a movie and you'll love the theater. But you know, one of the things that it's also within a quarter of a mile of transit. And so one of the things that we're finding is that we have a shared parking model, which is designed in Sunnyvale for just that, like something that you can very easily sort of get rid of as the time goes by and replace it with something else as people get less and less through their cars. The problem is there are a bunch of people there who want that parking, and we are having trouble, frankly, leasing up some space because there is not parking right in front of the store. So most retailers want a parking lot right in front of their front door that people can be dropped off at and, you know, can migrate to their location without much difficulty. Putting folks in shared parking scenarios or reducing the amount of parking just makes it harder for us to lease up, unfortunately. However, on the office side, we do find that office users, particularly those, you know, the large tech users, are much more inclined to provide incentives to their employees to get out of their vehicle, free passes, free Caltrain passes, free VTA passes, things like that, that they're more likely to accept a lower parking ratio, but the retailers in general won't. So it is a fine line between us trying to get rid of old archaic parking structures and bring something to the table that we all know we would probably be, you know, a better use of that land, and trying to keep other folks happy, in particular the retailers.
Okay, thanks.
That answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's great.
Okay, awesome. Yes, sir.
Josh, just a comment for your information. When I first came to California, the company I worked for occupied almost the entire strip from 17 to Brokaw. And we used the area that where you're building as a test track for the Bradley fighting vehicle. I don't know if you knew that.
FMC, I do know that. And I will tell you, I got a funny story for that. So when we were demoing for Coleman Highline in the test track, they found all kinds of crazy stuff under there, like old shell casings and all kinds of crazy stuff from when they were developing the Bradley. So, you know, as a military, ex-military guy, I don't think a lot of people realize how much defense contracting made Silicon Valley. I mean, obviously there's not a lot of them today, but it is something that is near and dear to my heart. So I do appreciate that. And that's very cool.
It was kind of a kick. Well, I have a question. In terms of retail space, I don't know if you're on friendly enough terms with the people at Santana Row to get their experience of going through several iterations of retail tenants going in and some hard times before they got it right there to help you figure out how to get that going. Can you talk to them, or are they competitors?
Yeah. Well, they are competitors, but it's a fairly small world. So, you know, we do talk to ourselves. I mean, to our peers a lot about that, because frankly, it's a nut that we've all got to crack. If we don't, it affects everybody. So while we are competing for tenants, like at the end of the day, we definitely talk about it. And you made a great point, which is they've now gone through multiple iterations of tenant mix. And so I will tell you, and it's really ironic a bit that you brought this up. I had a meeting this morning with one of our municipalities that we work with about a retail center, and The planning commission had asked that we have all these vibrant conditions on the retail frontage, and would have cost us a whole lot of money, and probably still will to some regard, because we're going to be forced to do some of the changes. But what I was trying to explain to them is that going forward, we have to be as flexible as possible with this retail space. So when we're building out new retail space, particularly in a mixed use environment, even if we don't expect food and beverage, we're already planning for grease interceptors, for grease hoods and grease shafts. And we're trying to make, right now, food and beverage, entertainment and lifestyle is the lifeblood of retail. Most of all of our new retail fits into one of those categories. You know, the soft goods, the sort of what you would imagine the typical Main Street would have looked like 25 years ago, like dress shops and things. That's been all absorbed by, you know, Target and you know, those various soft good retailers. There's probably 5 or 6, and then Amazon and the online presence. So we have been trying to make those spaces as flexible as possible, so that when we find ourselves in a scenario like they have at Santana Row, that we can very quickly flex the space from whatever the original intention was to whatever the space is for that tenant. So so we do talk to them. We you know, we share marketing plans, and you know, because at the end of the day, it helps us all.
Good.
David,
All right.
wait, I had one last question. Hey, Josh, is that your cell number?
Is that my cell number? No, that's my
Okay.
office number.
Okay, are you in San Jose?
We office in Cupertino, so
Okay.
very close.
Okay, because I have, our Rotary Club's working. I don't know if you're familiar with Play Garden that Almaden did, or the Rotary Club did out by the airport. So we're doing a very similar project out in Almaden, working with the city and other nonprofits. So I mean, do you have contacts where we would be able to, like, folks that use, because we've worked with a developer before that helped us do a welcome to Almaden sign, and it was very similar. Like Bill Bynum that just asked you a question, like, he went and spoke at the council meeting on behalf of the project and on behalf of the developer and all that. So we're willing to do that kind of stuff. So I mean, it'd be nice to like pick your brain and see like where we could go find money that's being spent on parks.
I would love that opportunity to talk to you. I'm available at any time, you know, to talk in groups or small groups. I will tell you, I love hearing that because frankly, so I'll leave you with this just so you get an idea of scale. So our project, and I'm going to do round numbers here because it just makes it easier for everybody to understand, has about a $30 million park fee requirement.
Oh my God.
So this Gateway Crossings project. So of that $30 million fee, we're offsetting about half of it by dedicating that park that I mentioned earlier, that 2-acre park, and then a half-acre paseo, which will come in phase 2, gets us, you know, about, and it maybe not 30 million, maybe it's 25 million, but either way, it's still, there's still a large remaining fee even after those dedications that we will have to do. The downside is we don't get any input at all in what happens to that. So we have to build the park, we have to maintain the park, but we really have no input on how those fee dollars are used.
Yeah.
And so I mean, personally, I'd love to partner with an organization like yourselves that would at least be able to take some of those park dollars that we're we're giving as part of fee and plowing them into something that's useful for the community. That'd be great. I'd love to help.
That's awesome. Thanks, Josh. So I'll get in touch with you.
That sounds great.
Cool. Thanks.
Especially because their project's in San Jose.
And we have $2,000.
Hey, Josh, I wonder if I could ask one more odd question. I see developments like yours going in, and I'm wondering if the city or anyone gives you credit for locating as part of your retail space a medical clinic or anything of that kind.
No, and that's a great question, because I will tell you that of the 45,000 square feet that we now have, take out the 7,500 that PAL is leased already. So, 37,000 square feet. If I had to guess, I'd say 15,000 of that, maybe 20,000 will be food and beverage, and the rest of it will be service retail for our residents. So that includes a small clinic, probably childcare. So we are planning for that as part of our marketing and outreach, but we don't get any type of benefit or fee reduction or anything by having that as part of our tenant mix.
Yeah, I would have thought they'd give you some credit for that. But
I'll tell you, again, sort of taking it back to my roots a bit, You know, and I worked with a lot of smaller communities, not necessarily this size, but I was very surprised by sort of the very little bit of credit that's given based on things that in other locations in other states, you know, they're very willing to accept some trade-offs because they recognize the utility of it. I mean, a medical clinic is a perfect example of something that brings utility to not only the residents of our site, but also the surrounding areas, and they're not being supported by that.
Aren't they going through Santa Clara City though? Was it San Jose?
What was that? I'm sorry.
Are you going through the city of Santa Clara or the city of San Jose to do development?
So this project that we were talking about today, and I'll just quickly share my screen again so you can we can shoot. Let me see. Okay.
That's your vacation photo.
Sorry. All right, let me try this one more time. All right, let me get this plan up. All right, 1 second. Okay, so oh shoot. Zoom, I forgot to share the screen again. Sorry about that, gang.
We already told him it's in San Jose, Josh.
Okay, so it's actually in Santa Clara.
Oh.
So so this is San Jose. So all of our Coleman Highline project is located in San Jose. This this white line that's coming down the corner is the San Jose Santa Clara city line.
Boundary, yeah.
And so it's hard to tell here. You can't really see it, but we actually pushed all of. I mean, again, just another expect the unexpected. San Jose and Santa Clara don't love each other, and so you know. That's another issue we have to deal with. So we pushed all of our hotel site out of, at least the building, out of San Jose, because we didn't want to have to, you know, we basically we wanted to work with Santa Clara because we didn't want the San Jose Santa Clara issue to find its way into our site. So so it is all in Santa Clara, but we do have a piece in San Jose, but it doesn't have a building on it. All right. Well, hey, thank you all again for allowing me to speak. I really appreciate it. As I mentioned, I'm more than happy to talk to smaller groups or, you know, to anything that I can do to help. And good luck with everything. Good luck with your projects in Morgan Hill and your Almaden project. And thank you again.
Thanks.
Thank you, Josh.
Good luck to you. Keep us posted.
Thank you.
I mean, if they have to spend that kind of dough, they could easily just kick us $1 million.
But I wonder if that's money that's spent in Santa Clara.
Where'd
Or
Jerry
wait,
go?
but are they dealing with the city of Santa Clara or the county?
Is
See,
someone
did
frozen?
it again? Right.
We're not muted. So we can-
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We can hear you now.
Oh,
We can't hear you,
okay.
Brian.
All right. Thanks a lot. Is there anything else that anybody wants to talk about or say? I think Joe, thanks for coming. He's a neighbor that lives in Almaden Valley near us, and he's also retired.
Thanks,
Thank you
Joel.
for coming, Joe.
I like you better in the Hawaiian shirt, not the tuxedo. You look more relaxed.
All right, great.
Brian,
And-
make yourself a big note right there that says share audio when sharing video.
I can't share audio. I don't know how many times I have to tell you. It's either comes on or it doesn't. It could be because I have these headsets, so I have to figure out another way. It's a Chromebook. It's a
Well,
Chromebook.
the club's gonna chip in and we're gonna buy you a TRS-80 from Radio Shack.
Just buy me anything but a Chromebook. All right, guys. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Ken,
Bye.
I